So, more thoughts on self. If you were to say to someone, be oneself, they would say, well, of course. I am myself. Who else am I? And I would say, are your thoughts your own? And you would say, yes, my thoughts are my own, because I have been told to think that. So, but they're likely not, unless you've gone through some kind of editing process of your own, of course. And it really begs the question, it doesn't even beg the question is really this, is are you what you think, and do you think who you are? Truly. We have so many messages from birth till now, and increasingly, that direct us away from who we are. And the premise is this, is that you are the best self when you decide that you are who you are, how you are, and who you are to other people. But it seems to require some introspection, some discussion with friends and family. And particularly in this culture and land of bombardment, that you simply cannot just exist as self unless, at least for some of us, I have to define it, at least beginning to define it, and define it as I want to define it, under my own definitions, which, yes, can change. The premise is that I will then be my best self, my most fulfilled self, when I have gone through this editing process, or if I have edited my own thoughts according to my own beliefs, which are my own, which I have come up with in discussions with other people or discussions with myself. And you know, there's a couple questions that point to this, and it pretty much comes down to question everything. But that's not to question in a bad way. That's to say, do you know the why to what? And if you don't know the why, that's fine. Just try and attain the why, because the what is so readily available nowadays. You don't even have to think to be told what to think. And in fact, someone will tell you who you are, or an algorithm will tell you who you are, or know yourself better than who you are. But the better and higher humanity is to seek why, the answer why, the answer to the question why, and to at least have some semblance of answers. Now, of course, you can't always have a definitive answer, but the fact that you ask helps. That's part of the process. And so that when you re-enter life with other people or discussions with yourself, you'll have an answer that is truly your own and not mimicked by someone else. And the whole concept is that you will then be more genuine and more of yourself, because the ultimate end to everyone being algorithmically driven what to think will be boredom. Yeah, we might be productive, we might be this, we might that, but how boring is it going to be when everyone knows what everyone else is going to say at any one query? And even if you have something funky to say to a weird question, that doesn't mean that that's you. Now we're looking on the verge of machine learning and all this, and the point is, like, the humans are everlastingly interesting. But now that we have competition from our own selves mirrored in the silicone circuits, but that they will never be the source of humanity. We are the source of humanity, and humanity is us. So in many respects, I'm asking people, or suggesting to people, to be more human, to be more yourself, both in frailty and in strength, because that's who we are in all glory and all problems. So that when we share ourselves with others, we're not sharing a collection of thoughts and ideas collected from someone else, or even our own experiences. We are sharing a genuine self that has been affected by experiences and people. Hopefully the genuine side of other people that we've rubbed elbows with and been with. And that's one of the great things I find in nature, is that here I get a real clear signal, or a more clear signal, of who I am. And I understand that some people may not find that in nature, but for me it's true and it's genuine. I could say that one of my fundamental tenets is attraction and allure to nature, and not a worship of, but simply this is my tuning fork up here, and that I find myself here. I can walk here, I can be here, I can think here more than I can in other places. Does that mean that I'm thoughtless in other locations? No. It just means that this is an essential me thing. And that's another thing to practice, is essentially being you, doing something that is you and you only, for the purposes of just being you. Because no one's going to be you other than you, and no one should be you other than you. And that's what you bring to the table. And the boss who says, you got to bring performance or skills to the table, well, that's only in the framework of productivity. That's not in the framework of a richer humanity. Everyone agrees that productivity is good and all that stuff, but it's so shallow in the end. That's not to say to be unproductive. It's simply to say that the work of self is the work of bringing and enriching everyone around us. And for me, I think it's increasingly less of a question, and it just is. Again, I'm not saying that this is original thought, but I am one of the people who are standing up saying, yes, this is important. This is foundational. This is critical. If you do nothing else, you should be self, and that you should continue to be self, and you should seek yourself as you define. And the question is, if people in your life object, stand in the way of obstacles, make obstacles in the way, interdict, they aren't helping you, or they don't even recognize the quest. Ask yourself why. And you can even ask them why, and it's very unlikely that you'll get a genuine answer. You'll get something that's canned. And I would say, just listen to that. Try not to argue with that, because you're not arguing with a self, you're arguing with an algorithm that someone has ingested and has turned over and internalized. And it's not their fault. They may never get beyond that, they may never recognize it, and that might be fine. But for those of us who understand, it's important, crucial for us to continue, because the understanding of self is the understanding of freedom. The understanding of freedom is the essential human, most crucial activity. I mean, other than clean drinking water and shelter and food, it should be the seeking of freedom, and not just as little robot workers following the rules. It should be us being essential selves where we are and espousing that at every available opportunity. And I have found that if I were to have these discussions with people who are not, as I would say, awakened to this, I would get just a cacophony of different, business-based, religious-based gobbledygook. And I'm currently swayed by the lectures of Christopher Hitchens and Dr. Stephen Hassan, PhD, on the freedom of mind, and that the freedom of mind is the essential freedom which all freedom come from. That if you don't have or recognize that you can think what you want to think and say what you want to say, that this is making us all richer and better. And the things that stand in that way are things that are dangerous and eventually lead to violent overthrow of free peoples. And that's my interpretation. And and even if it doesn't result in a violent overthrow or violent clash, it results in a diminution of the human spirit, of your spirit and their spirit. And the point is, why? Why? Just because is not enough of an answer. Just because is an obstacle. Just because is a thought block that has occurred in someone's life. And they're just like, well, we just do it just because. Now, you don't have to make a whole, dialectical speech about how just because is dangerous or this or that. Just understand that if you hear just because, well, that's usually because someone's mind is captive to some other thoughts. And I try to be sensitive to that, even though in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh, God, how am I going to deal with this? But the point is, I may never be able to deal with this, because unlocking a captive mind is really not my responsibility directly. And I'm still working on tools on how to do that. I'm still kind of recognizing the factors that you see in the street life and in face-to-face discussions that indicate that someone's mind has been absconded or is in chains to some ideology. The usual apply. How do you get to heaven? How do you become a rich person? How do you become a powerful person? These kind of things it's not bad to be powerful. It's not bad to be rich. It's not bad to think about heaven. The question is, do you really believe that? And are you willing to come to grips with the cost of that to yourself and to those around you? So much of American society has been taken over by the win or lose mentality, and I don't hold that. I think that if I win over you and you become a loser, that I also become a loser, because there is less to be had. I believe in the infinite teachability of humans, not of all humans, because they're not all ready and they're not all seemingly capable of picking up the Enlightenment standard. But for those of us who call ourselves enlightened, it is imperative that we continue to march forward, because without the sense of enlightenment, there is no sense of freedom. And without the freedom, there's no sense of liberty and living as a free people, as we have and will continue to do. But the real seedbed, nurse log of this is the self that responds to the message. You should be yourself, and as such, you are a free person exercising your will, which in itself is valuable and will yield fruit for you and for your friends and your family, and hopefully your community, your greater community, your country, as a free people. Now, it leads to all kind of naturalistic thinking, like freedom is the natural state of humans, but it's not. It's not. It requires an active, engaged intellect, which is seeking that end and goal, but only through self. If you try to make someone free, it doesn't work. They have to seek it, and you have to, in my opinion, help guide them along the way. Leave the breadcrumb trail, make the bold statements as they come available. But you will find that in talking to a captive mind, that there are thought blocking mechanisms that are in place. There are fears that are just there, and that any history you may or may not have with this person will be subjected to the internalized ideological algorithms that have been, internalized. And that you can actually have a net negative discussion with someone, even if you genuinely mean it and you've been very forthcoming and polite, that you can, like a comedian who tells a joke that falls flat, you can actually go backwards with someone. You got to be careful, even if you don't mention them in a personal tone about something about their life or their thoughts. Just bringing a subject up can yield all kinds of emotional weirdness. And I've learned to listen to people, not so much on what they say, but the emotions in which are associated with those words, because if they don't make sense to me, it's likely the evidence of someone mucking around in their consciousness. even if it's their own selves have mucked that up. Like, why does someone get freaked out talking about heaven or hell, or why does someone get freaked out about whatever political discussion, whatever? Like, why are we at odds, even though we're friends over this? That's not to say we all have the same agreement, but we shouldn't be at odds. Like, at odds, win or lose, those are the tools, the dagger, the psychological dagger that's being used by the propagandists who control the technology and the thought distribution. And the premise itself is wrong. As a reflection of myself, I reject that premise entirely. Even though the presence of that ideology means that there are winners and losers. You just interject that into a group of people who are not paying attention to what's going on in terms of a control atmosphere. And then you have winners and losers, and you have people who internalize that I'm a winner and therefore you're a loser because you're not a winner like me. It's like, it just leads everyone just to go like this. And then you have, leaders who are winners, and they just they draw people onto themselves for the same purpose. And, they talk about enrichment and all this stuff, but it's all to lead to often to leading to feed the ego of the quote leader who is the biggest winner of them all. And that doesn't ultimately help in the concept of being a free people, of perpetuating freedom. It should be that we should have a rich ferment of freedom in the hearts and souls of each citizen, each person who hears this. That's where the real growth and the strength of freedom comes from, is from the person who knows it and believes it and can speak it and stand for it. That's the real crux, not following someone, not voting for someone. That's not to say you shouldn't follow. It's not to say you shouldn't vote. It's just, we need to be our own saviors of self, so that we can then say, I know, I believe, I am this way, in a way that doesn't diminish our fellow citizens. And, that's not to say that we're all going to be kumbaya, because at some point, the divisions will lead to a more volatile outbreak. But in the meantime, those of us who know and understand that what we're really talking about when we talk about ideas is is this an idea which leads to the slavery of self, or is this an idea that leads to the freedom of self? And all the economics and politics, I divide them right like that. Now, at the very top, you can get a little weird, where you can have a difference of opinion with someone who is themselves a freedom fighter, but you have to moderate that, because often you're on the same team and you have different opinions on how to achieve a goal, similar to the writings of John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, who were friends and enemies at different times in their lives. But who could say who was the better man, and who could say who was the better leader or the fighter for freedom? Right, exactly. And that's not the point. The point is not to bicker. The point is to seek self and to express self. That's what I would say. Now, maybe if I was in talks with John Adams, who was a great moralist, he would say something else, because he was clearly under the sway of biblical teaching. But a great person nonetheless. I mean, a great asset in this regard. So there's a lot to be said, but actually there's not a lot to be said. There's a lot to be meant. There's a lot to be meant, and that the first step is self. And I can't get away from the utility of that. And it's like it's just so simple and so effective and so pervasive. It's just fundamental, foundational. I put together some writings. I'm going to see if they're maybe useful. I kind of, this has got this kind of like, how do you know who you're talking to? And it's difficult to know, but if you can find out what really gets them going, like the concept of currency, like if you gave someone $100, they would receive that. They'd be like, oh, thank you for the $100, and they might wonder why you're giving it to them, etc. So in other terms, like when it comes to power, money, and sex, which are the three motivational objectives for the psychopaths among us, if you can determine which one of those is the highest, most valuable currency for whoever's in your friend group or circle, that will help you understand who you're dealing with. Because you could have a brilliant, friendly genius who is a power seeker. And if you're unable to find out why they're a power seeker or what is the end result of the power, it might be that they're on a dangerous path and you're on a dangerous path with them. And it might not be physically dangerous, it might just be a waste of your time. And that the relationship that you've built with them might be for the sake of their power seeking, not for the sake of your enrichment. And you won't find out till it's too late. And the same with the money seeker, and of course the sex is pretty self-evident. You can overguess these things, but I think the pursuit is certainly worthy. The other one is, for me, it is this person seeking relationship with me for the purposes of relationship? Because that is a fundamental human need. That is not a motivator for the psychopaths among us. A politician does not seek relationship with people just to seek relationship with people. Only those of us who seek and have that in our hearts, the binding and the connection and the meaning of that, understand that is the the richness of life is sharing yourself with others. But for the psychopaths, they do not seek that. So they use that, they pretend to be that, but that is not what goes on. And you can modulate in your own circle circumstances and times when someone is not in the relationship to be in the relationship with you. They're in it to seek, the power of status, the seeming power of status. They're there to make money with you or whatever, or to seek power, or just to hop in the sack with you, or any thereof. The other thing, this has to go with power, but is this person trying to get to heaven? Does this person know how to get to heaven? They're convinced of that. That's fine. That's great if they do indeed believe that. Do they think that their relationship with you is going to help them get into heaven? Are they trying to help you get into heaven? And that can be a very noble and honest thing, but if it's not spoken out in the open, then maybe some of the things you share with them are just mechanisms to move on to step 2 or step 3. The other thing is in your friend circle, when you start to probe around money, sex, power, heaven, relationship, pay attention to the emotions. Not that you can know exactly what someone's thinking or feeling, but if you've reached enough, if you're over 20, you know pretty much how someone's happier, or whether they're sadder, or whether they're fearful, or whether they're, kind of hiding behind something. And start to make note of that. And you can probe that a little bit. Like you could put them in a situation where the relationship between you is primary. Like asking a lower tier thing, like something that they like. Like I have people in my life who like to go to fancy restaurants. So if I offer to go to a restaurant, a lower tier restaurant, will this person, and I say, hey, I'd like to just talk, and have a nice dinner. And what emotions does this evince in this person? Do they then want to upsell to the fancy place? Why? My observation is that some people in my life, they want to go to the fancy place because they want me to pay for it. Just because. And the relationship comes second or third below that. And again, one of the ways to know that is to say, put the relationship first. Like, I want to hang out with you and we can go have dinner. And if they end up being more excited about the dinner than hanging out, then you can go, oh, okay, right. Now, that doesn't lead to a revelation. That just says, oh, okay, something's going on here. This person is seeking my company for something other than relationship with me. And I seek relationship with them, but they're not there for me. So whether they're not there because they're not seeking self, or whether they're just that's another discussion. I'm just giving some observations on how to probe for these things, because I've found that when I try to share genuine self with people who are not themselves, it is painful to me because I feel like I'm giving gold and I'm getting lead in return. And, you know, I only got so much gold. I only got so much gold, and I should keep some of that in reserve for me and for people who would really, truly appreciate the gold. Let me see. Oh, the other thing, and this is or Stephen Hassan, PhD, is what is the cost to the group or the friends, the people you know? So, for instance, if you opt out of an activity, do you then not get asked next time? If you opt out and you don't even give a reason, do you have follow-up communications, or is that it? You're out. Does someone seek out and ask, like, well, you know, I really missed you that time, you know, blah, 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 or, you know, we couldn't go because we needed you to help out with X, Y, and Z. You know, and you can navigate all those things, but pay attention to the emotions related to that. Because if you're dealing with a captive mind, there's going to be emotions that are related to abandonment, not being part of the group, fearful things like they might fear that you are able or capable or willing to just not be part of the group, and that they might find that threatening because they've never thought of that, or they're always keeping the cost of group membership in their minds. And then you flip it. What is the cost of becoming part of this group? Is there a cost? Is it open? Is it, and this is Stephen Hassan, PhD again, is like, is it open? It's like, hey, we like to go watch birds and nature. Everyone's welcome to join. This is when we do it. I haven't done this yet, but just for instance, right? And is it all free and above clear? And are the emotions in order? Like, is there power, you know, is some power hungry dude involved, or, you know, like, you know, you're being expected to bring a lunch every time and it wasn't negotiated. You know, there's all kinds of things like that, which you might agree to because you love this group, you love to go birding. But if it's not spoken about, and if the emotions around it are out of scale or out of, they're not, the emotions are not clear and they don't bring you together, that's a warning sign. So that's the other thing, is if the emotions erupt and they become a decisive, a point of division, then, and you can't relate to that, you can't say, well, please explain to me what you're thinking. You know, I really like your company, I like hanging out, you know, tell me what's going on. And not in an accusatory fashion. And if they never get around to it, I'm not saying don't ask the question, just make a note, like, oh, okay. They likely have thoughts and emotions that are not, they haven't recognized. Or maybe they've recognized and they're under a different category because the religion, the power of the sex has screwed up their heartstrings or their mind strings, and they can't pull it out yet. And, you know, it's fine, but just pay attention to that so that you don't hit that again expecting a different response. Right. And the other thing is, like, does this person that you're talking to, do they have a group identity? And the question is, I would ask this overtly, like, hey, what's your group identity? But they'll never answer. You know, they'll say something, well, you know, I'm a guy, I have a phone, I have a car, right? But going back to the concept of currency, what currency do they seek? Do they seek flashy things that other people will immediately appreciate? Gucci bags, Nike shoes, whatever, a fancy car, whatever. A car that instantly people go, ooh and ah, right? And is that car part of their identity? That's fine if it is part of their identity, but if you identify as self as your primary identity, it's unlikely going to be a car. So I'm not saying to discard this person, but just pay attention that when you talk about the car, when you talk about the person, you are likely dancing around different thoughts and emotions that are not necessarily in sync with what you're thinking. Oh, and if you're a part of the group, or the friend you're talking to is part of a group, and you know what this group is, and it's relatively open, you could ask yourself, why, as a follower of the group, do your thoughts not sync with the thoughts of the leader, or at least the words of the leader, or the espoused words, or the actions, right? And I'm not talking about hypocrisy, of the leader. I'm talking about if you're part of a group and you don't think the way they do, why are you part of the group? And that's just an introspective, it's just another way to ask, what are you doing? And what are the costs associated with that? Because if there is significant psychic friction, you might ask yourself, well, is it worth it? And if it might be worth it simply because you've always just done it that way, not that it's optimal for you. You might actually free up some of your psychic energy by not being part of the group in the same way, or you might just free up psychic energy by understanding that you've done it this way under captive thoughts, not in a free association. It's talking about the cost. Like, what is the cost? Do you know the cost? Do you know the cost? Because then it helps me deal with the psychic and emotional attributions of hurt feelings, of misplaced priorities, misplaced investment of time, thought, that might not be reciprocated because these people are running around with secondary and tertiary agendas that they may not even know about, right? But for me, I'm like, okay, they're not here for relationship. They're not here to really share. They're just here to kind of hang out together, which has its benefits. But I need to, for me, I have to kind of regulate that. I have to kind of tone down my psychic or intellectual participation. And that does it for today. I think, yeah, there's more here, but I have touched on it. Yeah, the premise is that most people are under the control of an ideology by itself, or a person espousing an ideology, or a community of people with the leader espousing an ideology, and that the ideology is so pervasive, like Christianity, like profit, like anything else that's super big, like it's so big you can't even see the edges of it, and that learning to free yourself from that can be the first step in learning to be a true freedom warrior in your own heart and in your own community. That to be true to oneself first, and then add your life essence, if you wish, to a group that has the closest alignment to what you're thinking or what you're feeling at the time. And it may be, there's never a perfect match, and that's not what I'm espousing. I'm just saying that your psychic real estate should be your own, and you should decide who lives on your lawn and in your house, your mental house, and you're the gatekeeper. Whoever comes in, whoever comes out, you've got the key. Before your awakening, you were corrupted and taken advantage of, and it takes some house cleaning. Clean out the rats, clean out the hobos in the corner of your mind. Like, get them out of here. Come on, let's go. Clean the walls, vacuum, get them out. And then you decide who comes in and who's there and under what circumstances and for what purpose. And maybe it might not be nobody. It might be no one. You might kick them all out. You got a clean lawn, you got a clean house, and it's yours until you decide who comes in, because that is your ultimate, well, as they call it, real estate, because it's your true estate, is yourself. And again, I'm not saying anything original. I'm just saying it, hopefully, for the next generation, that I have found these to be true. And I think that there's no downside to seeking this. And I hope that the sound of my words encourages people to begin, start, continue, end their search for self and their search for personal freedom. All right, take care. Oh, and by the way, this is what I was looking at when we were talking. Not too shabby, huh?